Anyone who's known me for about 5 minutes or who has ever heard me tell a story knows that my father died about 20 years ago under mysterious circumstances. What they may not know, and what you may not know, is that he died destitute. Which is actually not true, because today I looked up the definition of the word destitute, and the dictionary definition is lacking the necessities for life, which wasn't the case. Thanks to me and my brother and my mom, who was at that time my dad's ex-wife, and my grandfather, my father's father, he was not lacking the necessities for life. He had a roof over his head, he had food to eat, he had medical care to the extent that anyone could care for him. And he had people checking in on him. He had love. So he was not destitute, though that's something I've always said, and now I understand that to be different. He was, however, broke. And when you die broke, it's not unsurprising to not find a will. So where there's a will, it's much easier to deal with things. When there's not a will, it's much more interesting to deal with things. The thing about being broke is that without an estate, your debts die with you. That was something I learned 20 years ago, dealing with my dad's lack of an estate. I've never been to one of those like will readings. I don't even know if they exist in real life the way they do on TV, where someone in a suit behind a big, wood desk reads a list of things to people dressed very nicely, and then fights happen or not. I don't know. I've never been to one. But I do know that when you don't have a will, things are super messy, unless you're broke. Actually, the weeks after my dad's death were far more simple than the weeks leading up to his death. Very complicated, very mysterious, lots of decisions to make. When my dad died, he didn't have a house. My parents had sold it during the divorce proceedings. He had an apartment with just a couple pieces of furniture that he had taken from our family's house, legally, he took with him. It was fine. So we gave those to friends. And he had a car, which was nothing to write home about, and no one wanted it. And so we decided to donate it to the local fire department. They knew him. They knew that he had died. They had actually come to his house for several calls. They were happy to take it. They were going to light it on fire, which they all did without any paperwork. Cool. It did turn out that the scrapyard they were going to tow it to needed the title, which I'm not even really sure existed. But they worked that out on their own somehow. I don't know. And I ended up with a photo of my dad's car totally burnt out before it was towed to the junkyard. It was awesome. It was awesome. So he did owe a lot of people and a lot of businesses money. And again, those debts died with him. There was $24 and change in a checking account. And in Pittsburgh, 20 years ago, we had these things called Mac cards. Right? You might know them as ATMs. So I took his Mac card and I went to a branch and I took out $20. I thought he owed it to me. I'd been through hell. And the $4 and change, I was just gonna have to let go, right? Because there was no alternative. There was no will. So I had to look up something else today. I had to look up the statute of limitations on mail fraud and identity theft. Because while some of you know, my father committed identity theft against me several times during his complicated and mysterious life, in the aftermath of his death, the student had become the teacher. When you live in New York City, and your father dies in Pittsburgh, and there's now no one living in the apartment that you had been renting for him, but you need the mail to somehow get to New York City, your best bet is to log on to USPS.gov and use your MAC card to pay the $1 fee in your father's name so that the government agrees to send that mail forwarding. I mean, literally, they use the MAC card to prove that you are the person you say they are. The $1 fee, completely inconsequential. I committed mail fraud. I committed identity theft, and it worked out great. I got a post office box in my neighborhood. The mail came there. I dealt with all his affairs. It is definitely illegal. It is definitely past the statute of limitations. I am definitely not a lawyer, so I don't know. I could be making this all up. And honestly, when there's not a will, it's slightly interesting. But if you plan on dying destitute, please don't. Get yourself a will, please. Thanks.